man who's on his purpose has to focus on his purpose. And if you're married to a man who's on his purpose, your role is to support him as he goes out and gets these things, goes out and fights for these things, goes out and finds the things that are needed for the family. So in those periods of time, and there could be many of them, it's not going to be the relationship that you want. You don't want to be like a single parent, of course not. You know, you want help with the kids, you want, you know, a break, you want, you know, not to have to do this and not to have to do that, right? But your role at that time is to support the vision. He's out there doing the thing, your role is to support. And I think it's really important for us all, in whatever capacity we're called on to do this, is to play your role on the team. You know, just play your part on the team and don't sabotage the team through your own personal stuff.
That's where that emotional regulation comes in, right? Because if you don't have control of your emotions, and that doesn't mean you have to be perfect with it every day or every moment, but when your emotions, when you're led purely by emotion with no element of logic in it, that's when you can sabotage the relationship, and that can be problematic, right? It sounds, you know, simplistic, but it's really true. Play your role. Play the position that you got on the team for.
Okay.
There was another point up there where I wanted to, the sister says, leadership is given to those whose actions represent what they speak. That's what I mentioned before about the integrity gap, right? Leading oneself, a man leads himself, right? It sets a blueprint, a model for those that are under him, that are following him, his wife and his children. But the ownership on the sister is this: you vet for that beforehand. Look for integrity beforehand. Ask those questions about the vision beforehand. You know, that's one of the things that I made a post about before. If you're not following me on IG, you should. Nasir Al-Amin. Remember, check for integrity, check for what his vision is, and then ask him, what role can you play in that to support it? That's one of the things you can do to help, right? That's one of the things you can do to see what his vision is. Right? Where do you want to take the family, and how do you see me helping in that role? And see what he responds. And if he doesn't even give you a clear vision, then I think that tells you something in and of itself. If he gets uncomfortable that you asked him about that, I think that tells you something as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
a man
could be
with purpose, this is an alley-oop. This is you gave him a, you know, it's like taking a test and all you have to do is write your name to get an A, right? If you ask him that type of question for a man that's really been focused.
So for the brothers who are listening, you want to be focused and you want to be able to answer that question. I want to just go into this this question here, mashallah. Sis says she was talking about, is asking why basically not, hold on a minute. It was quite important actually, because she was saying, like, if you ask why, is that always a sign of confrontation? That's right. So she was explaining to say there are different ways that people process information. Some people focus on what, some on when, some on why. I ask why questions to understand why people do things instead of assuming. And then she mentions that Allah allowed the messengers to ask questions in order to understand. But I'm wondering whether this is the type of question that you could have, the type of conversation you could have with somebody that you're considering marrying, which is, how do you feel about me asking when you've made a decision or when you're considering something? How do you feel about me asking why? And have that conversation. What do you think, Brother Nasir?
Yeah, I think. See, I think tone and diction is important. So if you're going to use the question of why, I think it's important. What is your tone? You know, when are you asking why? Right? And if you're going to say why, is there another way to word it? Right? Because again, we got to remember, if you look, what I say often is this, sisters, what I need you to do is that same level of thinking discernment that you use at work, I want you to use it at home with your husband. Just as you're meticulous in how you word things with your supervisor at work, I want you to have that same level of discernment and being meticulous about how you word things with your husband. So maybe why isn't the best way to ask the question. Maybe just having a conversation with him, you'll understand what the why is. And then you also have to ask yourself, why are you still asking why? Because is this really asking why so that you can finally get him to change his mind, or to see that you're really right after you've already had the conversation? All right. So I think tone, diction, when you're having the conversation, and what's the reason for having the conversation. If it's literally clarity, then okay. But I would make sure I'm in the right space mentally and emotionally before I sought that clarity. But I wouldn't make that a prerequisite for me to follow.
I think that's the sticking point, isn't it? That's the submission piece. That
Right.
is the submission piece right
You
there.
don't have to get it. You don't have to get it. You don't have to understand why. Fall in line.
Okay. Brother Nasir's in his trick bag again.
Right. that's 101. Fall in line.
Oh my God.
Because that's what you're gonna do at work, aren't you? Let's be real. You're gonna do that at work. You're going to fall in line and give your supervisor what he's asking of you, regardless of what you think, regardless of what you feel. So give that same deference to the man who's been given the divine mandate to be your provider and your protector.
Pushback.
And if not, brother, I would not advise you to stay in a situation where she can't give that to you. That's not asking for too much.
Need some pushback for you.
I am sorry, but it sounds really terrible if I have to act with my husband as I act at work with my manager. No, what I'm asking you to do is have that discernment, meaning you pause and you think about what you're saying. Now, if you don't think you need to have that with your spouse, I would suggest you revisit the role you should play as a wife. There's always room to think before you speak. And so what I'm suggesting is the same time when you're at work, you think before you disagree with your supervisor, or how you're going to disagree with your supervisor. Your husband is definitely deserving of that same discernment and respect. So
I think it's the respect piece as well.
Yeah, please, I'm welcome to push back. To me, this is rudimentary. You do it at work, meaning you literally will think about your thinking before you express your thoughts. You will definitely think about your feelings before you allow your feelings to color the experience. Why not do that at home?
I wonder if the sister will.
Let me say. So what happens is this: ABC. A is the event, B is the belief, C is the consequences. Emotionally, the emotional consequence, the behavioral consequence. The A at work, supervisor says something that I disagree with. What is the thinking? The B, the thinking is, I don't like this. However, it's not the end of the world. I can handle it. And I need to pay for my kids' private school. The C is, I'm irritated. The C, so emotional consequence is I'm irritated. The behavioral consequence is I agree with him, and I complete the report after work hours. Why? Not because your supervisor told you to, but because of the B, the belief, the narrative, the meaning you created about what your supervisor said. The B is what you have control over. You don't have control over the supervisor. You have control over the belief, the narrative you create after your supervisor says something, requests something that you don't like. That narrative, that meaning you created is what produced the C, right? The frustration and irritation, which is a healthy negative emotion, the healthy alternative to anger, and produce the you sitting down at your desk and filling out that report and getting to him after hours before you left your job. So what I'm saying is that same formula I want you to use at home with your husband. I want you to be able to sit down with yourself in the moment and question, what are you telling yourself when you hear something that you don't like, right? When you experience an emotion that is uncomfortable, I want you to ask yourself, what am I telling myself? Because what you told yourself when your supervisor asked you to fill out that report before you leave work today, that emotion you created came from the narrative that you created once he said that. So that's what I'm saying you should do. I'm not saying you need to act as you act or put on the mask that you put on when you're at work. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is I want you to have that same deference for your husband, to give him that modality, that deliberate thinking, i.e., this event happened, this is the narrative I created, and this is how I feel, and this is what I do, what I did. Is this constructive or helpful or not? And if it's not, I'm going to go back and change the way I'm thinking so that I get the outcome that I would like, or be able to influence the outcome that I would like. That's what I'm asking you to do.